This is a Media Lab podcast. Here he comes, Mr. Canada. What's with the sash there?
Well, since it's the only thing I have on, I think you know exactly.
Yeah, and very tastefully placed.
Well,
very tastefully placed.
I had to make a couple of cuts for it to fit around, but, I think everybody gets the gist.
Yeah. Are they doing this? I'm sorry to pry too much into your personal life, but as you have come dressed like this here this week, are they allowing pageants to happen again? Is this a Zoom meeting that's going to happen here very soon? Fill me in on what the backstory is here.
No, it's just Saturday.
In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone.
This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine. Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
And I am Dave.
And I'm the machine.
A podcast where a sentient machine forces us to watch movies in order to prevent it from initiating the apocalypse. Although we do tend to talk about the ideas of the movie rather than the movie itself. For whatever reason, this machine really wants us to go through the year 1999. And today, we're going to be watching the film Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Every year, in the small town of Mount Rose, Minnesota, a special competition takes place.
I know what some of your big city no-bra-wearing, hairy-legged women libbers might say. They might say that a pageant is old-fashioned and demeaning to the girls. No, I think you boys are going to find something a little bit different here in Mount Rose.
Ouch!
But for two ambitious girls,
I believe this pageant teaches you what's really important in life.
I dream of getting out of Mount Rose. I mean, guys get out of Mount Rose all the time for hockey scholarships or prison.
and two jealous mothers,
My daughter is the most talented contestant that Mount Rose has ever had.
it's not just about beauty.
Go Muskies! Woo!
So I feel like I'm going to know the answer to this, Dave, based on reactions at the time and what I know of this movie. But what's your history with Drop Dead Gorgeous?
I have none, but I will say this, I had a very interesting movie IQ around this era where I know that this is a Kirsten Dunst movie, even though I've never watched it. And I used to have the almost omniscient ability on television that if I would flip by channel surfing past a movie, I could tell you exactly what movie it was, even if I hadn't seen it. And I used to creep Helen out. That power's gone because I don't watch movies as frequently, or like I'm not connected to the movie world as much. I don't watch as many trailers and all that kind of stuff on commercials. But so I know Kirsten Dunst is in it. So that
reminds me of my grandmother, who, if we ever played trivia games and it was asking about a movie, her answer was always Cool Hand Luke, a movie in which she had never sine. So,
oh man, that movie
I find that hilarious.
It's a bit overrated. I was a little disappointed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of right there with you. I'd heard of this movie and really did not think about it for probably over a decade. Until, I don't know, a few years ago, I noticed it creeping up onto a lot of critics, I guess, like misunderstood films or films that didn't get a proper shake when they first originally came out. This is definitely what you would call a cult movie, especially if you get into like, teenage girls or even like the queer community.
Phrasing.
Like, this is a big movie for them specifically. Like, this hits a lot of the boxes that they enjoy.
Phrasing. A lot of good sound bites here.
So I'm excited to jump into this because I don't really know a whole lot other than it is a beauty pageant. That's kind of the only thing I know about this movie. I don't really know anything else about it. So, I'm excited to see it.
With the movies we've been watching, Kyle, how bad could it be?
I mean, it can't be Superstar, can it? Let's hope not. Instead of throwing other movies under the bus, let's go and thank some sponsors, and then when we return, we'll be talking about Drop Dead Gorgeous. Hi there, everyone. Just Kyle breaking in here once again to tell you about some of the people that make this show possible. Dave is, of course, continually doing his makeup and rearranging his sash to go out on to the pageantry circuit if and when that ever gets up and rolling again. So it's left to me to sit here and to tell you about these people. First and foremost, I should let you know that Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This episode of Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is brought to you by Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. So in Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your energy from. If you choose Park Power, your money stays here. Plus, Park Power shares its profits with local not-for-profits that are working to make a difference for their communities. Shopping local is very important to Park Power's owner, Chris Kozowski, and we love local here at the Alberta Podcast Network, so it's a great fit. If you want to learn more, you can go to parkpower.ca. This week, we're also brought to you by the Alberta Podcast Network, so let's go and listen to one of our other great shows.
Hello and welcome to That's a Thing, a sometimes belated, already outdated guide to your teens, tweens, and everything under 20. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Karen. Every month we have a conversation across the generation gap about media, pop culture, society, the internet, that kind of thing.
Karen is my mom, and she's old. I am her daughter, and I am young. Together we are one human being, here to share with you.
Sometimes we bring in another human being who's Elizabeth's brother John to do a deep dive into memes and stuff like that.
Hi.
Thank you, John. We were named the Outstanding Kids and Family Series at the 2020 Canadian Podcast Awards, so we have that going for us.
Yes, and we will brag about it until the day the podcast ends, because I am petty.
You can find That's a Thing in the podcatcher of your choice. That is That's a Thing! ! You can also find us at albertapodcastnetwork.com. Is that everything?
I think that's it.
Thanks, sweetheart.
Bye!
Well, Dave, not only were you correct in saying that Kirsten Dunst was in this, but apparently every female actress is in this movie.
It's crazy. They're not even cameos. It's crazy how everybody seems to have gotten their start. Amy Adams was the most surprising as the sexual
Amy Adams,
cheerleader. What
Brittany
the hell was
Murphy
that?
is in there.
Brittany Murphy's still sweet, pre-heroin or whatever it was that she broke. That's dark, but she looked awful towards the end of her. Anyways, she looked cute and sweet. It was nuts. And
I know you have Allison Janney in it, and
Ellen Barkin,
all the big actors. Ellen Barkin, there's just Kirsty Alley, of course, but all these actresses.
Can I just quickly quip that this is easily Denise Richards' best acted role of her career?
Oh, well, there. The gauntlet has been thrown down. I think you're forgetting about Christmas Jones, but we'll maybe talk about that later. Is that her last name in that movie? I can't remember. Her first name is definitely Christmas.
You'll notice the silence. I can't even acknowledge what you...
Well, let's get some backstory here. Drop Dead Gorgeous. Actually, let me push this button first. Keep the fiction up. Drop Dead Gorgeous was released on July 23rd of 1999. There were two other films that were released that week. There was The Haunting, written by Carrie David Self and Michael Tolkien, directed by Jan de Bont, starring Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones, and Owen Wilson.
That's The House?
Yes. I think it's basically just The Haunting of Hill House, but they just call it The Haunting.
Is that
it's another update of that movie.
Oh, no. Tolkien's song is Christopher Tolkien. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, no, a different spelling, not that Tolkien. Also, there was Inspector Gadget, written by Carrie Aaron and Zach Penn.
Classic.
I don't know how Zach Penn keeps getting work, but there you go. Directed by David Kellogg, starring Matthew Broderick, Rupert Everett, and Jolie Fisher.
Is that Kellogg's as in the Kellogg's cornflake family?
Well, it's definitely spelled the exact same way, so possibly. He's riding high on that cornflakes money.
Snap, crackle, and... No, that might be G.
That's Kellogg's, I think.
Yeah, let's move on.
Anyways, this movie is rated 6.6 on IMDb, 28 on Metacritic. Ooh. And on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 68 critic reviews, it is 46%. And then based on 640,255 user reviews, it is 75%. So definitely a big split there between critics and viewers. This film, luckily the machine had a copy for us to watch because it's not all that easy to find.
Nope.
It is available on DVD. There was no Blu-ray release that I could find, at least. And apparently you can find it on the streaming platform Popcorn Flicks, but only in French. So
it didn't even
that
play.
area,
it didn't even play. Not that we looked, but the French one didn't even play. Yeah, it's disappointing.
So pretty hard to find this, unfortunately. Its budget was $15 million. It opened to $4 million. Domestically, it would make $10 million, that is. Internationally, it did not have an international release, so zero. So it left theaters with only $10 million on that $15 million budget. So a big box office flop.
I feel like we have to count how many times you say box on this episode.
Its plot description from IMDb is, a small-town beauty pageant turns deadly as it becomes clear that someone will go to any lengths to win. It stars Kirsten Dunst as Mary Amber Atkins, Kirsty Alley as Gladys Lehman, and Denise Richards as Becky Ann Lehman. So let's talk about Denise Richards for a little bit. She was born September 17th, 1971. She started her career guest starring on TV shows such as Saved by the Bell, Doogie Howser, Married with Children, and Beverly Hills 90210. She would then take a role in the very bad, but it is a cult film, Tammy and the T-Rex. Have you ever, you might have seen stills or something from it. It literally is a T-Rex and a small girl team up to fight crime or something like that. Anyways,
that sounds like it could be awesome, but Denise Richards is in it, so it's probably not.
Whoa. 1997 would be her true breakout year, as she would be in Starship Troopers, and then followed that up the next year by being in Wild Things, a movie that my parents phoned me one night to tell me, oh, you've got to watch this movie,
What?
Wild Things.
No way.
Not even joking. No.
Your parents are so liberal, man. That's great.
In some ways, yes. In a lot of ways, not at all. 1999 would also be good to her, as she'd be the Bond girl in The World Is Not Enough. Over the next decade, she'd be in such things as Undercover Brother, Scary Movie 3, and Love Actually. Then she would return to TV for a bunch of guest spots, especially working with her then husband, Charlie Sheen, on 2.5 Men, and then his follow-up sitcom, Anger Management. In recent years, she's been starring in the soap The Bold and the Beautiful. The next film you might be able to see her in is Money Plane, which we've talked about already, as that is the one co-starring Kelsey Grammer, and is described as a professional thief with $40 million in debt and his family's life on the line must commit one final heist, rob a futuristic airborne casino filled with the world's most dangerous criminals. It also stars Edge, the wrestler Edge.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like from U2, right? The Edge?
Not the Edge.
And he's like,
no, this is Edge.
With the reverberating power chords. I was a big U2 fan for a while.
I still like U2, and I know that it's an unpopular opinion. So there you go.
Yeah, I have no idea what they released after 1999.
I mean, technically, you don't really need to know anything past that, but still. Anyways, Daniel, Dave, here is, I'm going to send the rest of this copy over to you. Fair warning, I don't think the machine had time to proofread this. So
it's a good thing that
good luck.
I might have and made a few edits because you're a bitter old man, machine.
When you least expect it, I'm going to hit you over the head with a folding chair.
Because I don't know much about Kirsty Alley. Is it Kirsty or Kirsty?
It's Kirsty. It's Kirsty Alley.
I have no idea.
Just like it's Kirsten Dunst, not Kristen Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst, I learned because she actually had a career. Okay, let's move on.
I just want to say that all thoughts and opinions that Dave says are his and his alone.
Fucking right they are. And I stand by them. Kirsty Alley was born January 12th, 1951. Her first role was in Star Trek II, The Wrath of... Sorry.
Not the Ratch of Khan that I just noticed is what it says.
Star Trek II, The Wrench of Khan. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan in 1982. She was pretty good as a Vulcan lady in that. That was a pretty good movie. It might even be considered the by some nerds as the Star Trek movie. But anyways.
I would be one of those people.
Earworms, so gross. Okay, she would be in a bunch of films and TV series, but what would truly make her famous was being cast on Cheers in the 6th season after Shelley Long left the show. She would stay on until it ended in 1993. Do you know how long she was on? I forgot.
Yes, she was on for 6 seasons.
Christ,
so Cheers ran for 11 years. Shelley Long was on for the first 5, and then she took over for the last 6.
It's weird to think that Woody Harrelson became famous from that show too.
From that show too,
he
yeah.
actually had a career as well.
He came in season 3 after the original coach died, unfortunately, so they had to recast him.
Was his name Woody in the show? No, I don't think so.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
During that time,
I was a big Cheers fan, by the way, and also Frasier fan, so I kind of know all of these references.
Watched a lot of reruns, eh? All right.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, she would be in Look Who's Talking. Wow, what a classic! And its 2 sequels. That's John Travolta, right? With the babies that dogs. The babies that talk?
No, that's 2 Men and a Baby.
Oh, what's Look Who's Talking? Isn't that the babies that talk? Look Who's Talking. Who cares?
Well, no one cares. There was 2 franchises going on at the same time. There was basically the same premise.
After the end of Cheers, she'd be in the film Deconstructing Harry and For Richer or Poorer before being in this film, Drop Dead Gorgeous. She'd return to TV to star in Veronica's Closet, but that ended after 3 seasons. Since that time, she's been in a bunch of TV movies and guest starred on shows, but rarely appears in feature films. There are no future films planned as of right now. The last thing you might have seen her in is the TV movie You Can't Take My Daughter. Is that like a TV movie Taken or something?
It kind of sounded like a female version of Taken,
That's
yes.
awesome. There's no way that it's awesome. Kirsten Dunst, born April 30th, 1982. Her first film credit is New York Stories when she was 7 years old. Apparently I can't read today.
I just made this connection, which I didn't before. So Kirstie Alley was in Deconstructing Harry, a Woody Allen film, and then Kirsten Dunst was in this one, New York Stories, a Woody Allen film. So they had their past with Woody Allen. Just saying.
Yeah, it's the phrasing, man. After that, she was in The Bonfire of the Vanities, Interview with the Vampire, Little Women, the 1994 version. It's been stressed by the nerd who wrote this, and Jumanji.
There's only been 5 different versions of Little Women, so I want to be very clear about which version she was in.
Jumanji's great. It holds up pretty well. I mean, the special effects are one thing, but it's a good movie. The late 90s saw her act in a variety of different types of roles. She was in Wag the Dog, starred in The Virgin Suicide, and voiced the young Anastasia in that animated film. After Drop Dead Gorgeous, she would flex her comedy skills in things such as Dick. Sorry, I just wanted
There's
to
a
really...
good stress on that.
Yeah,
good stress on that Dick, yeah.
Such as Dick and Bring It On, Helen's favorite movie. One of.
It's not bad. I like Bring It On too.
Yeah.
So.
And what's her name? Gabrielle Union started her career on that.
Yeah.
Or maybe she was already in a DMX movie before that.
She was. We saw her in She's All That, wasn't it?
Oh,
She's
yeah,
All
that's
That
right. She was,
Varsity Blues or one of those.
Yeah. As friend.
Yeah, friend. Like unnamed friend, but...
But it was the 2001 film Spider-Man that would make her super famous. Cast as Mary Jane Watson. I'm not going to read Peter Parker's girlfriend because everybody knows who MJ is. She was
but describe Uncle Ben's death, because every movie needs to tell us about Uncle Ben's death.
With great power comes great response. She was part of the infamous Upside Down Kiss, which was mocked constantly for the next decade. Mocked is a strong word, Kyle. I would say
I guess
it remained
parodied. Maybe parodied for the next decade.
Yeah, I wrote here, I'm adding my opinion that it remained in the cultural zeitgeist because it was memorable, Kyle.
It was, yeah.
And the first 2 Spider-Mans are awesome. She would also appear in the subsequent, the original Sam Raimi trilogy, the third of which we will not mention because
we blame Sony for that. If you read the history of how that film got made, he was handcuffed pretty heavily to make that movie.
In recent years, she has stuck to drama in such. Oh, that's a weird phrase. I missed this.
Take the such out.
Yeah. In recent years, she has stuck to drama in very different things, such as Midnight Special, Hidden Figures, and The Beguiled. Up next is The Power of the Dog, The new Jane Campion film, described as a pair of brothers who own a large ranch in Montana. A pair of brothers who own a large ranch in Montana are pitted against each other when one of them gets married. This movie was written by Lana Williams. Her resume is not extensive. She began on TV working on shows such as Hardball and Bless This House, and then she wrote 11 episodes of The Drew Carey Show. That was a great show. Also on reruns that I watched that. After this film, which was the first film she wrote, she would write the TV movie In My Opinion, provided additional dialogue for Shark Tale, and then wrote the 2015 film Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. Currently, that is the last credit, and there are no upcoming films as of right now. This movie was directed by Michael Patrick, what do you think, Yan?
I'm going to say, I think it's Jan, probably, despite how it's spelled.
With the two N's, right?
Yeah.
Michael Patrick Yan, or just in case you find out different.
Or Jan, maybe.
Michael Patrick Jan. Michael Patrick Jan. Michael Patrick Jan. Born May 15th, 1970, this film was the first feature he directed. However, he'd stay mostly to TV episodes of Reno 911, Flight of the Conchords, it's a great show, and Little Britain, USA. He'd also direct a bunch of TV movies. In recent years, he's helped to direct the Netflix show Atypical, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, which is also a great show, and The Good Doctor. It appears he's going to return to feature filmmaking with his upcoming film Mantivities. It's described as a group of friends get together in an attempt to shake their adolescent behavior. That sounds awful.
Yep, well, we welcome him back, though. We welcome him back.
Speaking of that premise, you know it's a good movie about that? Tag. Tag's actually a pretty fun movie, but we'll move on.
I'll take your word for it.
Just watch it. Just watch it, Kyle. Come on. All right, let's move on.
I only watch movies that the machine forces me to watch, so
I've heard that about you. Yeah.
Dave, what were your thoughts on this film?
I was pleasantly disappointed. I don't know. It was
pleasantly disappointed. Okay.
It was watchable. There were genuinely some funny moments. Right from the outset, I just told myself this is clearly a dark satirical thing. So having open sequence with Adam Weston is great. And then I don't know. At the end, it just dragged on too long. I didn't understand why the last 30 minutes were in the film, but it was good. There are obviously some 90s nuances that are problematic. Will Sasso being Will Sasso is...
I was going to say, that's going to be the biggest thing I'm going to probably mention here in this review.
It was kind of hard to watch. I thought Will Sasso was really funny when he was a Mad TV mainstay, just because he's insane. But that character is quite offensive. As the movie got going, I was able to kind of settle into small town white America. Mm-hmm. It's a little jarring when it opens up, because it's just quaint, lowercase q. But, as the story builds up, it's pretty funny. So I enjoyed, I sat through it. I didn't turn it off. And I think...
I want that to be the pull quote that they put onto the poster on the 25th anniversary re-release of this film. It's just like, I sat through it.
Review by David Young. I sat through it. I was waiting for the comeuppance. Are we allowed? Spoiler alert. And when it came... I thought the movie was over, and it went on for an additional, easily 20 minutes. And I couldn't understand it. I thought it lost the point after that. And that 20 minutes could have been better used to fill out a little bit more of the murder mystery narrative, which is not actually played that well. It's more just poking fun at, small town America. But
yeah, I think that's primarily what this movie is even concerned about is, we watched the other movie that is sort of doing that, which is Election, although it's very more narrowly focused, I think, in that movie. This one, of course, is also using the beauty pageant idea to bring us into that, but I think very much goes into the surrounding town and their relationship with it. As the resident small town person that grew up in a small town, definitely not like a United States small town, but a small town nonetheless, there was a lot of the stuff that kind of rings true to me, which is what I find funny about these, is that they are slightly poking fun at him about I think the darker side of small town life. It often is it's quaint and it's so nice and quiet and everyone is so friendly, but there's also the Minnesota nice and everything else that's like all wrapped up into that there's all these other things that are going on that no one really wants to talk about.
You know, again, with all of the sociological books I read, it's fascinating the veneer America has about the power of being polite. And these kind of movies are always trying to show that human beings are cruel, murderous. I think all writing has that root where we're just like, hey, you know, we're all pigs, so let's get over it.
You all look like pigs to me.
I think what this movie is really doing well, and once again, I know that you sometimes dislike me trying to bring in a deeper point to films. My argument is not that it's the first thing to do this. Absolutely, films and books and everything else had been concerned with this idea of like American exceptionalism, but like, is it really all that exceptional? Here's the dark side, and let's reckon with that. Even a movie that would come out later in a dramatic film, American Beauty, would also explore this concept. But I think that this is a very pre-9/11 movie in that way, where it's like really like, you know, like, yes, we're in all these great times. Like, we're just concerned about like how great America is, and we're focused on, you know, who the most beautiful person is in this small town. But really, when it comes down to it, the American dream is this lie that we've been telling ourselves since the inception of our country. And I think that's what it's really delving into, and why I kind of appreciate the final 20 minutes that you kind of found to drag out a little bit because of a bunch of lucky breaks. Even if she did deserve it, but still through a lucky break, she finds herself finally going to like the finals of this beauty contest, only for it to be canceled and her not to be able to, you know, grab that trophy that she thinks that she deserves. You kind of find out, like, even if you try and be nice and try and do the right thing and try and give back as much as you can, there's only so much the system's going to allow you to do. And the people that are like the richest are going to be the people who make off with it anyways. It's not going to be the person that's trying their best. That's what it feels to me is what it's trying to say. Whether you think that it succeeds in that is another question, but I think that's what it's trying to say.
I think my issue with that interpretation is I don't necessarily disagree that there might have been that intent that would drive them to write those last, whatever it is, 6 scenes, but I feel like the Kirsten Dunst character is not portrayed that way. She doesn't value winning as an exit strategy. She's portrayed as somebody who's supposed to be this moral center who does things for the sake of doing them right. There's a naivety to her. And so when she loses the pageant, she has, it's a spiritual moment because she's like, you know what? Like, I got to perform in front of my mom, and that was a key emotional moment for her, right? Like, it wasn't about winning. The character that wanted to win was Kirsty Alley.
Yeah, and her daughter. Yeah. I mean, at the same time, I think that there is a little bit more intentionality behind the Kirsten Dunst character, because like her big thing about being in the pageant at all is because Diane Sawyer did it, and she wants to become like the, you know, news anchor. So it's like, well, Diane Sawyer did it this way, so I have to do it the exact same way. She's trying to copy somebody when that's not how you usually do things.
But that's, you know, what I thought was interesting is in the way I saw it was an expression of naivety, because she doesn't reference Diane Sawyer's journalistic abilities, whatever. She just has this idea that someone she really looks up to came from a small town, apparently won a beauty contest, and ultimately ended up on national networks. There's that huge gap for me is because it doesn't, like, it's just not there for her. And even her being willing to give, and, you know, maybe she, in hindsight, should have, when people are getting murdered to oppose, you know, the royalty, it's something that she's willing to kind of concede for the safety of her melted hand mother and all these other little gags that happen just because she's not this person that wants to win at all costs. I think that ending would have worked better if that was the comeuppance for the mother and the daughter. If they didn't blow her up on a float and Kirsten Dunst actually got a career, like if we were going to do this, the epilogue thing I hated, but that was just kind of a shtick from that era. But, you know, if Kirsten Dunst finds a different path and ends up, you know, studying, to imagine that, like actually earning it through work and academics and not participating in a pageant. And then Denise Richards and her mom claw their way up to the top, and it turns out there's nothing for them. There's something that makes sense if you want to point the finger at, the emptiness of the American dream. But they blew one up, they sent the other to prison, and then the girl that was the nice girl ends up standing by herself in front of a bus. Well, the other part too is why would these girls even show up in a bus to a company that's foreclosed? That doesn't make sense. And then for all the women there to go fucking like Planet of the Apes and tear down in a riot, it's just so awkward, man. None of it made sense to me. It felt very forced at the end. Like even what you bring up, which I think would have been a great social commentary, is lost. It's so awkward. And then, the final point is I'm not a big fan of epilogues. It's such a cop-out.
Like this character did this thing.
Yeah, and this person drew out. I think that stuff's bullshit. But it's not funny, It's it can be.
Yeah, very rarely.
But yeah, exactly.
I kind of agree with you. I'm usually not a fan of them just putting the text on. Like, if this is important, then put it in the movie.
Right.
Don't just like explain it away in like 30 seconds. I don't know. I guess I'm just much more positive on the ending than what you are. So I don't want to get too drawn into that conversation. The riot thing, I'll just mention from my perspective. Not that I know like a lot about the pageant scene. I mean, this beautiful face, you wouldn't believe it, but I've never been in a pageant before. But from what I understand, it's like for a lot of those girls, it's like this is their way out. Like,
sure,
I can use my beauty to get deals or whatever. There's a lot of opportunity, get a scholarship, that sort of thing. Like a lot of those contests can give you that opportunity. So when that is wrenched away from you completely, when it's out of your control, I could see them getting to a point where they want to ravage the hotel.
You know what's sad about what you just said, Kyle, is, we're on a podcast because we're not going to win beauty pageants. No. You know what's sad is that moment when she's just before the food poisoning, when she's watching all the women warm up, is that at that national level, they're depicted as actually having real talent. And so
exactly right.
So we're like looking at this, and I agree with you on the point that, and in America and maybe other sort of overly capitalistic worlds, the equating physical beauty and access to upperclassmanship, that's a real thing. But how sad is it, and how cynical that there's a woman who's an opera singer, clearly, but she feels like she needs to look good in a bikini to get a shot at singing at the Met. Those two things are incongruous. Nobody gives a shit in the opera world whether you won a pageant. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you that it's not because that's not true. That is how a lot of people are raised. I don't even know if it's a small town thing. I have no idea. I don't follow pageants. I've always thought of them as disgusting. But
just to prove your point, and because I have to prove myself of being like the woke person on here on this podcast. There is male beauty pageants.
Let's not go there. No, I'm just joking. Okay,
there is male beauty pageants, of course, but I think that women's beauty pageants are like by far the ones that people focus on. But it always has felt like that.
Are there male beauty pageants?
There is, but I don't know how successful they actually
competed.
Are.
We'll have to get some pictures.
My bikini is amazing. No, but I was saying, it's like
please.
the female beauty pageant has always felt to me, and really what it is, like, oh yeah, you're like really good singer or musician or whatever. Now, show me the majority of your body.
Show me your boobs.
Like that. That's basically what it kind of gets brought down to.
I don't know.
And I guess there can be a empowering nature to that too. There could be a way to do that where it's not just like, just show me your body.
I don't think there is. There's unless you're going to go to America's Got Talent or Star Search, but the reality is those are the same except out of humiliation, right? It's the capitalist humiliation, and those people never. What is the hit ratio of someone who comes out of a talent show? Not to take advantage of what's going on in the world today, but one of the thoughts I've had, because I'm not very active right now, is what we're seeing is the end. This veneer being ripped off, and it's
And when you say this, I think we should be very explicit. We're talking about like the Black Lives Matter protests and stuff that are going on around the world.
Yeah, Black Lives Matter for sure as a figurehead, but even everything coming out of coronavirus and all this stuff, and seeing how different countries are dealing with it. Speaking about earlier about I can't remember how you put it, but how people want to display their country as having power. I mean, it's over. Whatever the impact may be, and they may go on in a pantomime for another few generations, but we're seeing that it's been rotting maybe from its inception. I was just reading up on Frederick Douglass because he has a quote that I like, but I think even from the inception, let's say just to pick on the United States, they've had a rotten core from the beginning. And you know me, capitalism and the chase of money, wealth, and power and class, it doesn't work. It doesn't.
Well, yeah, and I mean, to bring it back to this movie, because I agree with everything that you're saying. I think that's what the biggest, I can't really say revelation, because it's been something that I've been wrestling with, and especially once you came into my life, it's like all you ever talk about. But like the inherent evil might be the strong word, but the inherent evil that capitalism engenders in society, the corruption, because it basically, someone else put it this way: if the ultimate goal is to become like a multi-millionaire or even a billionaire, there is no way to do that without stepping on people.
Right.
There's no like good way for you to become like ultra rich, because all that means is that you're either exploiting workers like very explicitly, or you're implicitly doing it. Like that's the only way to get to that amount of power and that amount of money. And I think that there's an attempt, at least in Drop Dead Gorgeous, to sort of kind of get into that. I don't think that it gets too far in, but it's like, these people were successful because of the nepotism, because of the inherent passive aggressiveness. Like, it's pretty obvious that Kirstie Alley is the one who probably stole Kirsten Dunst's dress and disposed of it somehow because she really wants her daughter to win. And that is basically the American dream in a nutshell. It's like, it doesn't matter how much you go and try your best, there's going to be someone who kind of like fiddles with the scales to tip it into whatever direction they personally want it to go into.
I think
I think that, yeah. And then nowadays we're seeing kind of like the dissolution of that, especially when we're saying like, defund the police, or like capitalism is inherently evil. It's like, we're done with this. Let's burn it down and build something new. And I don't know how well that's going to go over the next, decade or so, but that's kind of where we're at.
It won't go well, but I think it's actually very explicit in this movie. I mean, the father is openly talking about taking advantage of Mexican workers,
right,
and making fun of them about talking. I mean, it's intentionally offensive, but it's not played strong enough, and that might just be the sign of the times, because they were still a strong enough counter movement. Maybe they were afraid if they push it. Then it's not like people weren't woke in the 90s. I mean, there have been people that have been trying to liberate everybody again since the inception of that country, which is not to excuse Canada either.
We should not be saying like Canada is this bastion of like liberal progressivism. No. Like, we have our own demons to deal with.
Although, with the exception of, definitely the First Nations people have a larger gripe. I think Canada's a little bit softer, maybe just because we're so far apart. Nobody knows what the other person's doing. But
I don't have to look at you if I don't want to.
Oh, now we do, because the internet brings us together. Kyle, you can't escape me. I'll just keep fucking FaceTiming you. What are you going to do then?
That's right.
Yeah. But Drop Dead Gorgeous, actually, I think the strength of the movie comes from this explicit dive. So to your point about me influencing you about my anti-capitalist nature, it's not just stepping on other people's toes. It's not just stepping on other people's toes. Pageantry talks about selling your own soul, right? Talking about I'm a highly trained violinist. I've had a violin in my hand since I was 3 years old, Mozart style. But the only way I believe that I'm going to make it is if I take all my clothes off, work out every day to look good in a bikini. That's fucking insane. It just doesn't make any sense. But it's normal.
Well, I mean, and this can be ratcheted up even more so. Like, you look at the Marvel superheroes. I'm thinking of like Hugh Jackman specifically. I read this article once, like him being shredded in Wolverine. The only way he did that, yes, it's like not eating any carb for like a few months. And then even before he goes in films, he doesn't drink water for 36 hours just so it like, contracts everything. So it's like, how good of a life is that? I mean, the money must be great, I guess, in the compensation. But still, like, that's I don't know.
And because we're movie people, we can make lots of excuses about, the concept, for example, of method acting and the value the individual might derive from being able to accomplish something like that. But you're right, it's exactly that problem. I mean, comic books in their expression visually, kind of like my new self-plug photography podcast, but my approach to photography in general being kind of negative to culture. Because it's presenting images that we believe we have to conform to. And so comic books, for example, particularly after the 70s, and then all the way through today, maybe 10 years ago, every woman is depicted as this impossible body in skin tight something, regardless of their power. And all the guys, if they aren't wearing a trench coat, have muscles where muscles don't exist, have, body shapes that
12 packs. Yeah.
Right. And so the Avengers movies come out and the X-Men prior, and they have no choice but to conform to it. It is actually, I wonder if I watched the first X-Men, if it would be jarring how unbuffed they are compared to the modern Avengers, because that was the best they could accomplish in that era. Right.
I think we kind of mentioned this back when we were talking about Austin Powers, when we started talking about James Bond specifically. Like, you stack up like Roger Moore and Sean Connery or George Lazenby.
Sean Connery still had he was pretty tough looking in his Speedo.
Yeah, but you put him next to like Daniel Craig, and it's like you're looking at a kindergartner and like a 20-year-old as far as like buffness goes.
Right.
Like it's night and day. You can see like the changing of the times of what that kind of imagery, I guess, kind of puts into our popular culture.
No.
This is all to say that this movie, I think, is very funny.
Yeah, it is.
I know we've been talking about like really heavy topics, but I had a really good time. I think that everyone is like on top form. We mentioned all like the actresses. I think what's interesting, I mentioned a few times like the Bechdel test about, is there more than one woman character? Do they talk to each other? And do they speak about a man? When they do, can it or do they not talk about a man? Can it pass it? Like, this passes it like in the first 5 minutes. Like this, I don't like, there is male characters, but they're so not important to this movie at all. Like, this is about women, for women, written by a woman. It's almost too bad it wasn't directed by a woman, because I think it would have even brought another different style to this that would have been, I think, would have like capped it off really, really nicely. But you can definitely tell that this is, and I wonder, I don't necessarily want to cast judgment, but I wonder if that 26% on Metacritic is because this was a movie not really made for the majority of the male critics out there.
Yep. I mean,
you know what I
think
mean?
So. I think, it'd be interesting. One of the premises of this podcast that we kind of miss a lot on is reframing what we would have been like in 99 watching this movie.
Yes.
And I don't know, when I was 20, whatever, would I have understood the satire and dark humor, or would I have just wanted to see people blowing up? I have no idea.
I will speak for myself. I don't think, because I would have been 16, I guess, at this time. I think, because it was in July that this released. So I don't think I would have picked up on the satire necessarily. I probably would have picked up on maybe some of it. It's like, it's making fun of America, or small town America at least. And there were some other jokes that I would have understood definitely at that time. And there's some sight gags and stuff like that would have definitely been picked up on. I don't think I would have picked up on the subtext that's going through this entire movie.
Yeah.
That I do appreciate now, coming to it as an adult.
Speaking of sort of being written by a woman and having these strong female characters, I loved how cringy the perv judge is. And it's such a reflection of watching this movie as a male, because particularly, either being an old pervert that wants to see all the young pageantry, or a teenage boy like the boyfriend who just wants to smush it. That scene when they're doing the choreography outside on the driveway, and that creepster's like, holding the camera, and he's like, well, it's like you guys that just take video. Like it's such an expression of that culture. What would be interesting is if they made that movie now, if that would even be an old creepy bald dude in a small shop, or if it might have just been like one of the dads. Like the context of that thing has changed a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this has been a recurring thing, and definitely in the last few years, about the whole pageantry industry that's out there in the United States, is that it does drive a lot of that creepy male behavior towards very young women. And I'm glad that they had it in this movie specifically, only because I think that really is casting a glance at almost like the audience watching is like, you're kind of like this.
Yes.
If you enjoy this sort of thing, like it's going to bring these people in. I think the elephant in the room here that we kind of briefly mentioned is the very liberal and very unfunny Will Sasso character. Liberal use of, the R word. I'm just going to say the R word in relation to people that have lower mental faculties.
You've also made fun of his weight with that idiom. So I'm just
sorry.
Yeah. So you're not a saint, Kyle. You're no saint.
A saint.
Yes, it was surprising when they used I'll say it, but when they use the word retard so openly and brazenly to describe a single village idiot, let's call it, because it's not used in the term of Down syndrome or like all of these real mental afflictions people have. It's just this clown who acts like, I mean, I don't understand the character at all.
The issue about it is like, if you're going to have that type of character, I would even say you could probably get away with it, even using that word, if it was not in direct relation of making fun of him. Like, he is there to be laughed at, not to be laughed with. There's literally a scene that goes on so long with him. One of his like straps gets caught in a door, and then he's like flailing around and trying to fight with like the local kids, and like people throw things at him, and it's just like, this is A, not funny, I don't think, and B, it just goes on for so long. And there's like 3 scenes with him very prominently that are basically the same thing of like, let's laugh at this guy who like says weird things or touches people inappropriately.
I was hoping the whole way through, I mean, if we want to talk about missed opportunities, I was hoping the whole way through that you would get that turn. I mean, it's a little cliche, but and they almost played this, but that the so-called village idiot would be the key to unlocking the mystery. Either because of something he would be able to notice that nobody else was capable of, or because, for example, with the judges all being part of this conspiracy, he would blurt, and he kind of almost does in the judging room, but it disappears after the pervert tries to beat him up, which felt like after that happened, and then it cuts to the parade and he's just stuck in a door. It's at that point it's awful. It's it's just, and then he's beating up a kid and and then now he's a bully. He's like force feeding him cotton candy. Like, I couldn't understand
like what's going on.
What was going on there? That's why I thought that would be the end of the movie. Because I just figured they're literally tying everything up, pun intended, and it wasn't, Kyle. It wasn't the end of the movie.
So before we ask about whether or not this is still culturally relevant, just some few things I wrote down. Again, growing up in a small town, I enjoyed the fact that there's a bunch of people who are chewing Copenhagen. I don't know if that was a thing for you growing up, but chewing tobacco.
Okay.
So Copenhagen is a brand, so you just put it into your bottom lip and you like suck on it and then spit it out into a can.
I've never understood chewing tobacco. Just smoke some cigarettes.
Like a man. Okay, come on. Just something that ties together this movie with the last movie we talked about, Superstar, in a really interesting way. And once again, lets me talk about Stephen Sondheim, like my favorite composer. You may have noticed that there is a song that played in both of these shows. That's the same one. So there is a point where Brittany Murphy is doing her like talking head to thing, and she's listening to a song called Rose's Turn from the show Gypsy. And it plays like for 45 seconds for however long her scene is. Same exact scene that Glynis John was watching on television in Superstar. So interesting, like correlation between these two movies.
Of course, that's something you noticed. Yeah, of course, that's something you noticed.
I'm just saying, it's there.
It did happen, apparently. I'm not going to go back and fact check it, but fact check it.
Oh, and another movie that this is a callback to is 10 Things I Hate About You, because they both sing "It's Too Good." You're too good to be true is sung in both of those movies. So there's something going on in 1999 where like comedy films were like using similar songs. And
I just wonder, uses. I mean, musicals are trying to make a comeback. They've been gone too long. Just a brief, like I think you're gonna get to the point where we're running out of time and everything. I just wanted to reiterate again how there were so many young women who would become big stars.
Yeah, this is Amy Adams' first film,
right?
Which is pretty exciting. Who I think is, I know that so many people love Amy Adams. I still think she is criminally underrated.
Yeah, she's
as an actress.
She can do everything.
She's like been nominated, even like as an actress. If you consider Oscars to be worthy of anything, I think she's only been nominated once, maybe twice.
Oh, really?
Which I think is bonkers to me because I think she's great in everything. But yes.
She's great, and it is fun to watch, and that's acting range for you because she's done everything from campy Disney musicals to acting as the sexual object in this to hard-hitting dramas like The Fighter and what I mean, science fiction. She does everything.
Like even The Master and stuff like that.
Incredible.
Like where she's very like very fiercely dramatic. Yeah.
You had Brittany Murphy, who was before pre-nervous breakdown, whatever, and she's great, and she's actually like really fun to watch and really sweet. And it's funny too. What's her name? Ellen Barkin's actually pretty good. And there's a moment I noticed when she's hugging Kirsten Dunst where they actually, like the casting, I felt like they could actually be mother and daughter. There's a good energy between them. They played off each other well. And then Allison Janney playing her, what would become a big type of role for her. But I think before she's recognized of playing this type of role, she's great in it.
Well, yeah, that's true. And because she would have been on oh no, I'm going to try to think. Yeah, The West Wing would have been come out by now, I think, in 1999. So I think, it was this and West Wing at the same time. My opinion, tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think part of the reason why this is such a big movie in like the LGBTQ community is not only because it's like a lot of strong women and like it's funny and it's campy in like just the right way. I think it's never explicitly said, but I feel that there is an undercurrent of Allison Janney, Ellen Barkin actually being a couple. They never say that explicitly in this movie, but it feels like that's kind of what's going on with that relationship.
I mean, I don't know. Allison Janney does spend a lot of time bedding everybody, but yeah, maybe. I think the fun part was at first it felt this naive thing where Brittany Murphy's talking about her brother in Broadway, and I was basically either drag or trans or something, but he's always dressed up as famous women. But that big moment with her dad in the blow up post thing, and the look on his face, when he's got to confront the idea that his son is actually gay. I mean, it's great. It's actually really funny. And just because I'm an asshole, I mean, Denise Richards was actually really good in this movie. I am not a big Denise Richards acting fan.
You've mentioned a few times on this show, yes.
But she was great in this, and her sort of Denise Richards persona plays so well, like because she has, a bit of the resting bitch face. She does really cold and calculating well in this film. When she's holding the guns and stuff, you're just like, oh my god, like this girl probably killed everybody. And then Kirstie Alley was okay. I don't know. There's something about her that she creeps me out, man.
Oh, you hate Republicans, I guess.
Actually, I mean the irony of what those words have become to mean in the modern political sphere.
I mean, I think what she does so well is that it feels like she is borrowing from like the Fargo, like talking style. But coming from an evil way, where Frances McDormand was like this lovable, like truth seeker in Fargo. This is like the corrupt version of that character almost. So that was fun, I guess, in that way.
When is Fargo? Is it around this
96?
Okay, so it's
I think.
I don't know. Other than that, I mean, there are a couple of recognizable faces, but I don't think they became kind of a big deal. And it was interesting, like, again, in the parts that I didn't really like Nora, whatever her name is, from Saturday Night Live makes an appearance. And But again, the ending, I mean, I like that Adam West is in it. He actually, it's not just his voice or reference to him. I
didn't even, like, when it first started, I'm like, wait a second, Adam West is in this movie? And I was so bad that was the only thing that he was in. I was like, I wanted him to come back. There's two last things I wanted to mention, which is, number one, because this is basically a mockumentary, and I didn't know that going into this movie. Right. I thought that it might be one of those things that starts that way and then kind of transitions into a traditional movie. So it actually took me a while to like lock into like the style. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is going to be a mockumentary for the entire thing. I'm like, okay, I got it. And then I was fine with it. It's a bit of a throwaway joke in a way, but I love that this crew meets up with the Cops crew that are filming. Yeah. Big rips to Cops because it was canceled here recently, but
awful show.
It's fun. It is an awful show, but I'm just saying it's fun seeing those two kind of run into each other.
Well, it's interesting reading the Machine's backstory that the director did Reno 911, and so there's
look at me when you mention my name.
That list of credits. Flight of the Conchords. I love all that stuff. So there's cores where this would lead on to subsequent comedies that would stay in the same vein, but that part was...
Do you think that this still is culturally relevant? Does it hold up after all these years?
I think the themes are. I don't know. I don't know enough about small town living, whether people would still identify...
Big man on campus over here. Always tromping around.
Number one, of course, yes. But number two...
Throwing his cigarette butts into my Copenhagen chewing face.
Oh, man. I smoked a lot of cigarettes once. at one time in my for example, are there still parades? Are there still local pageants? Like, I have no idea, man.
I think it's more like, do you think people are still going to watch this? Because I think that I'm definitely going to probably watch this movie again.
Oh, yeah?
I'll speak for myself. I think that this is something I'll probably return to. I don't ever see this movie getting out of its like cult-like nature.
No.
It's going to be important for a very small section, but will it be on like the AFI's top 100 comedies of all time?
No.
I'm doubtful that they'll ever cross into that threshold.
I think, if we're in that context, I think it's written intelligently enough and acted well enough that it could have been something. And it's not a bag on the director, but like I said, I think the structure of the movie falls flat in its runtime for it to be like a memorable movie in a historical way. But it's got a lot of intelligence behind it and social commentary, which is fun to watch. But I don't know if I'd ever watch this movie again. And I'm just trying to think, like a millennial, whatever the new Gen Zs or whatever they are, will they even
Zoomers? Yeah.
Will they even understand the context other than the obvious, like bagging on the States, showing how woke you are right now is so trending, right? This is how old people talk about young people. It's hashtagging. But
this is like the eternal question for me, and there's no way to say this without sounding like old man yells at cloud, is I see less and less of people, even my age, but definitely younger, really even wanting to engage with older films. And when I say older films, basically I'm saying anything pre-1980. You know what I mean? Like, even that might be getting too old nowadays. And there's going to be exceptions to that rule, but it's getting harder and harder, I think, for people even to engage with that stuff. For some of the problematic material that absolutely pops up in older films, but also because it's just like, why watch this when we can make our own stuff, or when there's more relevant stuff being made for me today on the 15 different streaming services that are available? That might just be, again, me being old and not knowing, being plugged into like the young people.
I don't think it's your age. I think it's the blinders you have for being a film and musical nerd, which is that, like, for example, we're very similar in that way. The things that we notice, about watching films together, but even wanting to talk about films, that's already a very small segment of the world. I don't know if we brought up on this podcast, but I've been so upset about it vocally when I learned that trailers are structured intentionally to give away the movie because they found the general public won't pay unless they know that it will end a certain way. That's insane, Kyle. Like, as a movie lover, I hate that. I refuse to watch. That's
why I don't watch trailers much anymore until after I've seen the movie.
Exactly, but that's our opinion. So I think in our circle, whether you're born in 2000, after 2000, which is insane to me.
Hey, those people are working. They're in the working world now, Dave.
Those folks will watch movies from the 50s. And like me, does the context of Breakfast at Tiffany's change now that I'm hyper aware? I don't know. I don't think that movie's good in the first place. I mean, Mickey Rooney's yellow facing is very upsetting, but I didn't actually enjoy the movie in principle anyways, right? Just bringing that point up, one of the funnier bits is the Japanese family adopting the small town white girl.
Yeah. That bit, being like super ultra American about it, right?
But like in such a racially insensitive, hilarious, right? Over Americanized thing. And I love that the daughter does the whole pageant from this Japanese American culturalization perspective. She's not a white girl pretending, playing as a white girl in small town. She's like a Japanese girl pretending to be white. It's fun. I mean, that's a very complex joke, but I enjoy that. That kind of stuff's fascinating. So I don't know. There's stuff that in this movie, film nerds will always be able to take out of. The general populace will never watch. And there's a reason why it's only on DVD. Nobody gives a shit about movies like this.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're done here.
All right. Well, the machine has told us to stop. So let us get into some trivia here. I'm just going to print this out here for myself. So this film has gained new fans with time and is regarded as a cult film. In 2011, Allison Janney stated that she is approached by more fans of this film than for her Emmy-winning tenure on The West Wing, which is like fascinating to me that is still true. Lastly, we kind of talked about this, but Kirstie Alley used Frances McDormand's performance in Fargo as her inspiration as Gladys regarding Minnesotan dialect and mannerisms. So I guess it was a direct reference to Fargo.
You know what you should have done? We should have got a guest from Minnesota to bag on actresses' Minnesotan accents. It's kind of like I'm trying to look up.
No one lives in South Dakota, Dave. All right, I'm going to send the next two over here to you, Dave. You can read those.
Let's see here. I just clear my...
Yeah,
just
good clear.
Yep. In July 2019, the movie was released for streaming for the first time on Hulu. Which was met...
We do not get that in Canada, so that is partly why we probably could not stream it.
I remember the first time... one of the times I visited my brother in the States when he used to live there. And at the time, we only had Netflix. This is probably more than 10 years ago. And they had just opened Hulu. And I was like, there's a competitor to Netflix, and it's called Hulu? Anyways.
It is also now basically majority owned by Disney, which is true for everything.
Disney owns Hulu. Of course they do.
60% of it, because it was
Kyle.
It was before it was owned by the 4 major networks, but since Disney now because Disney owned ABC, now it owns Fox, so it now owns a majority share of the Hulu. Fun fact.
I'm just trying to think of what science fiction movie. I think all of them depict the next global superpower as a conglomerates of corporations, but Disney's...
I'm sure Disney Google will combine at some point and then just own everything.
Oh, before I finish, quick shout out to the current president of the United States, who's deeply entrenched in the pageant world. Fucking pig. Okay, let's move on.
Oh, right. Well, talk about not getting political on this show. Welcome, Dave.
Shit, I had it under control, Kyle. Fuck.
Just go full like Twitter on it, fucking Cheeto. In the Oval Office, hate him.
This is why I'm not on. This is why Twitter kicked me off Twitter. Oh, that's such a dumb story. In July 2019, I'll start from the beginning. The movie was released for streaming for the first time on Hulu, which was met with a host of celebratory tweets, particularly among women and queer people who have long recognized it as a cult classic. This is according to The Independent's Adam White. Am I supposed to... Is that a prominent person in that circle?
No, that was probably just a copy and paste.
Good job, robot.
I do other things besides this podcast, you know.
The original title was Dairy Queens, but it had to be changed after the corporation that owns the Dairy Queen ice cream chain filed the lawsuit. Is that Disney? I mean, this is just to bring it back together. It's probably Disney.
Yes, they had to actually buy Dairy Queen so that they could make the Frozen movie. So...
shit. I'm glad they changed it.
I guess that means that we are now to the reckoning. We have to rate this movie out of 5. The machine makes us do this each and every week. And Dave, what would you rate this movie out of 5?
You know, I think despite liking so many parts of it, I'm going to give it a 2. Only because the last third or whatever it is quarter, I wanted to leave. I really didn't like the way that it wrapped up, but I would say the first 2/3 is probably a 3.5, and so you know what, why don't I just go up to like a 2.5 out of 5?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Just adjust this rating here so I can.
Because this one's a hard one to rate because I really did enjoy watching many parts of it, but I didn't like how I felt at the end of it. So.
I am going to give it. Let me tell you what my rating is going to be. I'm sort of there with you, which is I think that so much of this film for me is like A+, like knock it out of the park. And then with the Will Sasso character and some other things, and this knocks it down a few pegs for me. Not as much as you, Dave. I'm giving this a 4. I think it's pretty strong.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, not enough to get into what I consider like the great among greats, which is like 4.5 to 5. That's my range there, which, yes, I did rate South Park a 5, just to put that back out into the ether.
Can we just compare? Can we just quickly compare these two movies in terms of intelligence, political satire, and commentary on culture? You fucking fanboy! I mean, this movie's written infinitely in a smarter way than that other piece of shit.
I have to go off and judge this beauty competition here soon, so we have to wrap this show up. No, so where we're at. We're tied with one other movie, which is we're tied with Election here. In this case. So what do you think, Dave? Do you think this is better or worse than Election?
I would actually put it above Election. I think it was more fun. I think election just, I actually don't remember election well enough. Isn't that a weird thing to think about? Like to compare them, right?
It's hard. I think it would depend on the day for me personally. My rating is actually higher on election technically, but let's do this. Let's leave it there. Have it above election here for right now, because I think there might be a couple other movies coming up that I'm going to have to convince you to pump up on the list. So I'm just going to say that.
We'll call it alphabetical and avoid
right.
avoid the controversy, as they say across the pond.
So entering our list at the number 12 position is Drop Dead Gorgeous. If you want to see the full list, you can do so by going to our Letterboxd page. There's a link to it in the show notes. But letterboxd.com/KDVSTM is where you can see the full list. And of course, KDVSTM is also what our social media handles are on both Instagram and on Twitter. So you can check us out there. So let's find out what we're going to be watching next week, Dave. We can push this button here. And I'm totally not opening up a new document because I forgot to open it up. The machine's opening a document. It's just printing out this very long document here, of course, so that I can tell you that our next movie, Dave, it's going to be your favorite actress. We're going to be watching Runaway Bride.
Are you sure it's initiating the apocalypse, or are we in the apocalypse right now?
Who knows? Well, before we run away, Dave, do you mind can you just cross your legs or something there? That sash it's chafing or rubbing something, and I'm not here for that.
I don't remember the quote from the movie, but something along the lines of only whores cross their legs. In the pageant world, we keep our knees together and our ankles crossed. Kyle, you should know better.